Hello everyone, and welcome to Alumni Talks. My name is Zornitsa, and I'll be the moderator of this online session on behalf of the school selection platform Unimi. The topic for today's webinar is the MBA program at the Cranfield School of Management at Cranfield University, the UK's only high-tech postgraduate university and one of the very first institutions in the UK to offer the MBA. The Cranfield School of Management itself is highly appreciated for its collaborative culture and quality education, including its triple-accredited MBA program. If you'd like to learn more, I have just pasted in the chat the official webpage of Cranfield's full-time MBA, as well as the school's profile on Unimi, where you can do 2 quick tests to see how well the school's culture fits your own values and how its MBA offering matches your personal criteria. So let us now welcome our panelists, Aidan O'Halloran, Head of Business Development at the Cranfield School of Management, and Steven Cowcher, Cranfield MBA alumnus, who graduated in 2018 and is now co-founder of Unowned Limited. Aidan will tell us more about the advantages of the Cranfield MBA, the application process and scholarships available, and Steven will share with us more about his academic experience in Cranfield and how it contributed to his personal and professional development. Your questions are welcome, so if you have any, please type them down either in the chat box or the Q&A section anytime during the webinar, and we'll take the time to address them at the end of the session. Now I would like to give the word to Aidan to introduce himself and the Cranfield MBA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's joined the session today. And again, I can just echo that point to please feel free to post your questions into the chat or into the Q&A box. We're delighted to receive them and do our best to address as many of them as we go along. So I know the main topic of the session today is to hear from our esteemed alumnus. So we're really delighted that Steven has joined us today. I will take a little bit of time at the start just to set the scene and introduce Cranfield and the MBA and give you some of the information that will give context to then the color that Steven will bring when we go into the conversation later on. So yeah, I'll just jump in now and give that introduction to the school. So I'll perhaps just share a quick presentation slide. So Cranfield, the full-time MBA is what we're going to be discussing today. Now, for those of you who are not so familiar with Cranfield, if you haven't heard of the school before or the university, it's good to know that Cranfield is a postgraduate only institution. So we were founded after World War II as the economy was transitioning into a peacetime economy, and were created as quite a unique institution that has really applied to having a real world impact. This is how this university was founded, and this then feeds into the School of Management and into the MBA, this real world focus on helping people to have an impact and to really advance their careers and to make a change. So this is who we are as a university. And if you haven't visited the UK, or if you haven't visited Cranfield's campus in the past, it's good to see that we're just here. We're located in what's known as the Golden Triangle between London, Oxford, and Cambridge. And so we're just in the middle there in quite an exciting part of the UK. But we are a campus institution, a campus university. So I think there's a lot of benefits to going to a campus institution. I think, if you're looking at different school options, you may be considering some that are based in the middle of big cities, and some that are more campus environments. And I know I, for one, do appreciate the opportunity to escape the big city life and to focus on the study and focus on the community aspect of studying on a campus environment. And that's certainly what Cranfield offers. So it's this high-tech campus environment, but not too far away from the major cities like London, or a great place called Milton Keynes that's just on our doorstep. So you have the best of both in a way that you have a campus environment to escape to and to focus on your studies and the MBA community while still being close to those major cities. This is a world-class institution, and I'm sure everybody on the call today would have done their research and checked online and read the web pages, and you'll see that we are a triple-accredited School of Management, which is quite a unique thing to have. It shows that this is really a world-class institution with the best of the best professors that are teaching there and the research that they publish. And we have thousands of alumni around the world from the university who are all part of this community still. So this is who we are as an institution. To just jump into the actual MBA program today that we're going to be focusing on, that this is a full-time 1-year MBA. We do also have an executive MBA, and you may be familiar with the traditional 2-year MBAs in the US. There's certainly a lot of benefits to a 1-year MBA. The fact that you can get that full MBA experience without having to take 2 years out of your career, so you can have the maximum experience, then jumping back into the workforce and taking that next step in your career, or making that big change that you've been hoping to do. If you're looking at the return on that investment, or you're looking at the making the most of your time, there's certain benefits to a 1-year program, and that's what we offer here. But it's an intensive program, and I won't go too much into the details of it. Perhaps we can draw more on that in the discussion with our alumnus, Steven. Just a quick note on career development, because I did message everyone in advance of this session, and I know people were interested in the statistics around the career impact that Cranfield can have. We do publish these statistics. You can see them on the website. You can see them in the rankings. All of the major employers have recruited from the Cranfield MBA in the past that are listed here. It's quite interesting to note that around 74% of our students were employed in the UK after graduation, despite many of them coming from overseas, from other places. That doesn't mean it's a golden ticket for anybody to get into any of these listed companies or to any location. It's still, it's still a challenge to do that. But what Cranfield and the MBA offers you is an excellent platform to advance your skills and to give you the best possible chance of having that impact in your career. You can find the average alumni salary for 3 years out, which is around $115,000 but something that I don't like to focus on too much, because everybody's journey through an MBA is unique, and these statistics can, give you the context, but really the journey that you'll go on and the impact that this program can have in your career will be unique to you, and you can get out of it what you want. So I think this is good to set the scene, but not by any means the most important factor. Now, just to quickly touch on the admissions requirements, because I know there were some questions around this as well. So what do we look for in a candidate? I think, first of all, Cranfield has a holistic approach to the admissions review. We do take time to review your entire application profile. We're not like some others where they may just look for the highest Gmat score and filter just by that, or something quite simplistic. Not at all. At Cranfield, we really do take the time to look at your entire profile, who you are as a person, and whether you are a good fit for the school. Having a good undergraduate degree is, of course, good evidence for this, to show that you can handle the academic rigor of what is an intensive program. If you don't have an undergraduate degree, but you're having very impressive professional experience, and you're still welcome to apply to the program, but most candidates will have their undergraduate degree as evidence of that academic capacity. We do also look for at least 3 years of professional experience, but here again, there's another point. People will join a full-time MBA at different stages of their career. It's different for each individual. There's not a one ideal year that everybody should go for their full-time MBA, not at all. It depends on your personal career journey. For some, this may be earlier in their career. For some, this may be later in their career. And so what we're looking for is that you at least have professional experience where you feel as though you have something of value to contribute to your classmates, right? This is an MBA program, so you'll be learning from your classmates almost as much as you're learning from the faculty. So it's important that you've got real world experience you can bring to the class and then share and apply what you learned to what you've done in the past. And so usually this is a minimum of around 3 years of professional experience. But again, it's not a one size fits all. We also, of course, like most top business schools, would look for a Gmat score or a GRE, but we do know that, especially since the pandemic, it's quite difficult to secure test dates. And so we also have our online Cranfield admissions test as an alternative for those of you who have not been able to go for a Gmat or GRE. So, these are all, again, important factors, but not the most important factor in the admissions review. And then, of course, an English score to prove that you can, study at this level. So an IELTS of around 7 or TOEFL of 100 or higher. But if you've studied your degree in an English-speaking country, then it could be possible to waive that requirement. Again, the structure of the MBA is so collaborative that you want to make sure that you have this ability to communicate and understand effectively to really make the most of the program. But these are just a few points. Again, this is not, you know, I don't want to give the wrong impression of the admissions process here at Cranfield. We do take your entire profile into account. We do also ask for essays, and there is an interview as well. So these are all, you know, important parts of the admissions process to identify suitable candidates for our school. Just a note here on the application deadlines, there is the next one coming up on the 23rd of January. We do have these different deadlines throughout the year that you can apply to if you're applying for the full-time MBA. What I would encourage you to do is to apply as early as possible, especially if you're aiming for funding. If you're aiming for scholarship funding, then yes, you know, the earlier you apply, the more scholarship of funding would still be available, and it would give you a better chance. And so, you know, we still accept applications in all of these rounds, but if funding is important to you, then try to apply earlier if possible, but don't rush your application. Take your time, apply when you feel ready. Just a note on those scholarships, we do have quite a broad range of scholarships. We are really fortunate that we have very generous donors who have donated to create scholarships. And, you know, we have some that are up to the 100% of the tuition fee, a full scholarship, down to some smaller partial scholarships, are quite a broad range, some for entrepreneurs specifically, some for different areas like leaders in technology, women in leadership, you know, a wide range of scholarships. And again, we are really fortunate to have this. And so if you are aiming for scholarship funding, then it's worth taking the time to look through our website and to find out more about which ones you feel would be suitable for you, and then you apply for those when you apply for the program. Now, the final point, I know I've been taking too long on this introduction and we want to jump into the actual discussion, which is, you know, the alumni talks, but we do have this event coming up this Saturday, which is an MBA preview day, where we talk more about the MBA experience and we go a bit more into depth around this. But it will include a masterclass with one of our faculty, Steven Cowcher, who's a senior lecturer in crisis management and change, I believe, and he's going to be giving a masterclass around the new space race, Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos. It's going to be a fascinating talk. So if you have time this Saturday, it's certainly worth signing up. You can find this on our website. Maybe I'll stick the link into the chat after this. It's well worth signing up for this event and hearing from our faculty and getting a bit more of a taste of what it's like to study at Cranfield. And so that's this Saturday. If you want to go into more detail around the program itself, around the career support that we provide, around the experience, and you know, get to see a bit of it for yourself with the faculty there, that's well worth attending. So that's this Saturday, and I'll share the link in the chat for that. But yeah, so thank you for listening to me going over the introduction there. Really appreciate your time. I will now jump into the main event, but please do keep posting those questions, and as we go through, we will do our best to answer them. But yeah, so Steven, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you can give a quick introduction to yourself and maybe a bit more about what you were doing before Cranfield.
Sure. Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to share my experiences at Cranfield. Gosh, kind of as Zornitsa mentioned, kind of when she introduced me, I graduated in 2018. The memories still are so fresh, and the program still seems so recent, but 3 years have passed by since, and kind of what I did at Cranfield really sets me up for those 3 years, which I'm sure that we will go into kind of like in a little more detail. Firstly, by way of an introduction, I am from the UK. My name is Steven, and I joined Cranfield's full-time MBA program in 2017, as mentioned. And at the point I joined, I had 10 years work experience working for investment banks in London. I guess the obvious question is kind of like, why did I want to do an MBA? And kind of leading on to that, why did I want to do it at Cranfield? Addressing the first point, firstly, I think kind of together with many people, you kind of get to a point in your career and you think kind of, have I reached a glass ceiling kind of, and you look around you and you see kind of like people in more senior positions, senior leadership or management positions, and invariably they do have an MBA. So I think literally from kind of like the first couple of years of my career working for investment banks in London, I kind of knew that I would go and do an MBA at some point. I didn't know when, I didn't know where, but I just kind of had an inkling that it would be something that I would actually kind of undertake, kind of invest a year in myself, basically kind of gaining kind of more business leadership experience and knowledge to be able to progress my career kind of. And that I think is generally kind of the case for most people. Now, I'll also caveat that by saying kind of having spent a decade kind of like working for investment banks in London and kind of working extremely long hours, kind of, I kind of got to the point of thinking, well, maybe this is also an opportunity to do something slightly different from what I've been doing. Now, kind of, I've always had a desire, I think we all have a desire actually to work for ourselves rather than to work for other people. And so kind of, I also had kind of an inkling that actually I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to establish my own company. I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. And I thought actually kind of, an MBA could also be a segue into that new career path for me, that new kind of like a professional destiny, kind of like, which I hoped could kind of would be ahead of me. So that's the first point of why I decided to do an MBA. Why Cranfield? I live in London. I didn't want to go to a business school in London. I have family, so it was kind of impractical to consider a business school outside of the UK. And really kind of like it boiled down to two institutions, Cranfield, and also kind of like Aidan probably doesn't want me to mention a competitor's name, but I will do so, Warwick. Two really, really good business schools. Now, why did I choose Cranfield? I went to preview days, and both of the preview days at both of those institutions had masterclasses. I remember kind of like going to Cranfield, and the masterclass was led by kind of like the senior economics professor, macroeconomics professor, Andy Angus. And I have actually studied kind of like economics at degree level. And I was just bowled over by kind of how knowledgeable he was, how insightful he was, how well connected into industry he was, kind of, and literally, he was bringing alive a subject to me that I had already studied, thought I knew something about, but actually literally within the space of 3 hours, learned a huge amount. And kind of, I met a couple of the other faculty members at Cranfield that day as well. And I just got a real sense that, kind of the faculty at Cranfield are world-class. They're really well connected into kind of like corporate UK, kind of global corporate institutions, and they can bring meaningful and relevant learning from kind of industry, the workplace, into the classroom. And ultimately, that's what we all sign up to do an MBA for, is to learn, to gain experience and knowledge. And I just thought that Cranfield would be the best place for me to kind of get that knowledge and experience.
Wonderful, great, and thank you for mentioning the preview day. As I said in the presentation, we have an online one coming up this Saturday with Steven Cowcher giving his talk. So I've put the link into the chat here. So it's great that you mentioned that, Steven, as part of your research process, that was an important step for you, and perhaps it's going to be an important step for the people on the call today. So please do, everyone, feel free to sign up for that. You can sign up easily. I put the link in again into the chat here. You can register for that, and you can hear from the faculty, and I'm sure it will be insightful for all of you as it was for Steven. Yeah, so I mean, you were obviously a successful applicant, and I know a lot of people here may be considering applying in the future. So do you have any tips that you would share on how to approach the application process and the essays or the interview or anything like that you think may be of use?
Oh gosh, good question. I think firstly, kind of like make sure that you do actually answer the questions, kind of like having spoken to admissions people at various different kind of like business schools. It's I understand a little surprising that sometimes people don't actually answer the question. If the university is asking you a question in the application form and is giving you up to 500 words basically to answer that question, and don't just write one word, kind of like write kind of a heartfelt, a personal, a career reflective statement basically in answer to that question. That's I think what business schools are looking for. They're not looking for the most polished of answers. They're just looking for general kind of and relevant and honest insights into individuals' career backgrounds and aspirations and ambitions. So, you know, just answer the questions, be honest, and make sure that they're relevant to you. And I would also as well say that I do know that both at Cranfield and at Warwick, you know, the presentation which you're asked to do, a brief short presentation in the interview, is very, very important. And again, this is just your opportunity to kind of, you know, give the score a flavor of who you are, your ambitions, and so, you know, for you to ask some relevant questions as well to show that you're engaged and you've done some research. So, you know, it's not rocket science. Kind of, you know, an interview for any business school is like the interview for a job. Just make sure that you've done some research, you answer the questions, and, you know, you show your ambition, which I'm sure that you all have.
That's wonderful. It's so true that, you know, the point you made around being honest in that application, answering the questions and being honest. Because at the end of the day, the admissions process from our perspective as, you know, staff is that it's not just see if you're good enough, it's to see whether if this is a good fit for you and whether you're a good fit for the school. And so to be honest in their admissions approach will help us to help you to make the right decision on whether this program is going to support you in your career. So don't tell us what you think we want to hear, tell us what you honestly feel, and we will help you to work out whether this is a good fit. And I think the interview, as Steven mentioned, is a great part of that as well, to ask questions and to find out and to help you on that decision-making process. And so that's what all we're trying to do with the application process. So thank you so much for sharing that insight. Do you remember your first impression of the Cranfield MBA, of the community when you first arrived? What was your first impression?
Oh, you're not going to want me to say this. My first impression of Cranfield, I mean, firstly, I had never been to Cranfield before, and I was invited, actually, kind of, I had been to the preview day. And then at the end of the preview day, I was invited to interview. But before that day, I had never been to Cranfield. Cranfield campus, Cranfield University campus is a lovely place. It's very, very green, kind of, it's low rise, so the buildings are fairly spread out. And actually, it's the only, from what I understand, university in the world that has its own private airstrip that's operating. So my first impression was kind of like, you know, this lovely green environment, but actually kind of, I'm a bit of an aviation geek, and there was an airport, kind of an airfield, and planes were taking off. So kind of, you know, there was one part of me that was thinking, this is going to be great. I'll be able to sit in the library, kind of like study, and also kind of like do one of my favorite things, which is to watch planes. So yeah, that was one of the first impressions. The second impression basically was kind of, again, kind of, I met one of the senior course directors for the interview. Again, just, you know, the world-class nature, I think, of the faculty that would be teaching us. Kind of, I had a really, really good kind of like a 1 hour interview. You know, it was very interactive. Kind of, I was able to ask lots of questions. And again, really got a sense that kind of, you know, Cranfield is kind of really at the top of the game when it comes to business education, and the faculty are just kind of, you know, amazingly well connected into kind of corporate life to be able to give you up-to-date learning and knowledge and experience from the workplace.
Wonderful, great. And did you have an opportunity to get to know your cohort well during the MBA? Because you know, there's questions around whether we have many international students, and, you know, was it a very diverse cohort, and yeah, did you get to know them very well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think kind of, and this is another reason I chose Cranfield. Cranfield purposefully kind of like limits the cohort, from what I understand, to about 60, 65. You know, kind of like numbers will fluctuate a little bit, kind of like depending upon the macroeconomic conditions and the student kind of environment. In my year, there were 59 students in the cohorts. Kind of, we were split into two streams. The cohort is small enough, basically, that kind of like, you know, pre-pandemic at least, we could all get into the same lecture theatre. So we were all the time, we were learning together, we were being taught together. Now, within the cohort, let's say of around 60 individuals, you are split into what is called a learning team. Now, that learning team will comprise of 5 or 6 individuals, again, kind of, you know, gender balanced, from all different walks of life, professionally, from different countries. You know, you will spend a lot of time at Cranfield in your learning team doing kind of like research work, dissertations, kind of preparing presentations, preparing for class next day, doing exam revision. And that is kind of a learning team that you will stay part of in both semester 1 and semester 2. those individuals literally will become like brothers and sisters for you. That you just spend so much time, you go through, I guess, such an intensive kind of educational year with those individuals, kind of like many of you will, gain kind of like the closest friends from the academic environment that Cranfield kind of like nurtures kind of like with these learning teams. I mean, a more general answer to your question is, yeah, I mean, you do get at Cranfield the opportunity to get to know everybody in the cohort. It's small enough, and there are so many kind of social events scheduled, timetabled as well. Not only kind of is it a very intensive year academically, so kind of obviously you're working very, very hard, but kind of, we always liked to think as well that, kind of the other side of the coin was play hard as well. So, there's lots of social events scheduled in the evenings and at the weekends, and trips. So kind of you do generally get to know everybody.
Great, fantastic. I think that there's a question here that's been posted in the chat from Maya, and I think we had some in advance that were similar to this as well, asking around how the MBA can help students to achieve their professional projects. And there were questions in advance around, does the program help you to connect with real world projects and real world experiences, and then how does that then help you in your career to evolve after you graduate? Maybe you could touch on that now, because it's a great question from Maya, so thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, firstly, so kind of the core modules of Cranfield's full-time MBA take place in semester 1 and semester 2. Now, a number of those core modules, for example, operations, or what is referred to as DMDA, which is decision making and data analysis. Those two modules basically involve you working with an outside company. So the professors, the faculty at Cranfield kind of are connected into the local and the regional economy, and they help you find kind of a company to work with basically on a project related to that subject. So kind of that will involve basically kind of a number of different trips off-site to meet the company, to understand a business problem or a challenge which they're having, basically, and to write that up basically as your assessed piece of work, your dissertation. Now, invariably, people will choose a company that, that resonates with them, that is of interest to them professionally, that they may want to work kind of in a related field or actually in that industry. So that's kind of one area. Now, the other kind of big area is the optional modules, which take place in semesters 3 and semesters 4. So I think in my year, kind of like Cranfield gave us a list of around 22 different options to choose from, and you have to choose 7 of those options. And again, those options kind of are probably going to be in line with your personal kind of interests are and where your career aspirations lay. So, there can be anything along the lines of kind of like more specialist finance kind of like modules, more specialist kind of like operations or supply chain modules, or project management modules. Kind of the list is quite long and varied. Now, a number of those optional modules which you choose, again, the assessed piece of work will be by you having to go out and do a research project with an outside company. And again, kind of like the faculty at Cranfield are very well connected kind of into kind of like generally corporate life in the UK. And they will give kind of like a very big helping hand to students, helping them find placements to do these projects with. So that kind of, I guess, is the curriculum side. Kind of now the careers service kind of in tandem as well is often kind of like let's say kind of receiving requests from companies as well for placements, for kind of like mini internships. Kind of my experience was that kind of like Cranfield's career service kind of like for the full-time MBA literally came up and helped me get a work placement at the BBC's Dragon's Den. So kind of in, I believe in North America and different parts of the world, it's called the Shark Tank. Here in the UK, it's called Dragon's Den. So that is where a panel of successful business people kind of like kind of almost like interview an entrepreneur with a business idea and decide whether to invest in his or her business idea. So yeah, I mean, Cranfield kind of like enabled me to go and spend 2 weeks with the BBC, and that actually kind of like extended out to a 3-month project. And I was able to submit a piece of assessed work at the end of that I had done with the BBC, basically as part of my overall kind of assessed work. And I mean, that was entirely down to the career service at Cranfield and, the Cranfield MBA experience for me that I was able to do that.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that question, and thanks Maya for asking that great question. Sounds like you had a lot of interesting, diverse experiences during the program. There was a question in advance around what is a typical day like or a typical week like on the Cranfield MBA. I don't know if you could try to answer that one.
Oh gosh, a typical day. I'll come back to the point you made. It's kind of like the MBA, kind of like a 1-year MBA is a very, very intensive academic experience. Kind of most, I'm sure people know, kind of MBAs in North America, kind of 2 years, kind of mostly in Europe, they are 1 year. You pretty much cover the same material and you do the same amount of work in half the time. So kind of, you can imagine at times how intensive that is, kind of like, from a study, from an academic perspective. A typical day, semester 1, semester 2, kind of, they are very kind of intensive in terms of you will be in the lecture theatre for quite a considerable component, basically, of your working week. So let's say on Monday, you probably would be in a lecture theatre from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5:45 in the evening. You have a 45-minute break for lunch, and you have a coffee break and a tea break, kind of a coffee break in the morning, tea break in the afternoon, 10 minutes apiece. So, you're probably getting a good 8 hours of tuition, kind of like in a lecture theatre environment every day, kind of like Monday through to Friday, in semester 1 and semester 2. And semester 1 and semester 2, as I previously mentioned, they covered the core modules, things like accounting, economics, finance, marketing, kind of like data management, kind of like leadership as well. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of academically a very, very intensive kind of like certainly first half of the year. Now, kind of for many of us, kind of, the workday, unfortunately or fortunately, didn't finish at 5:45. There is a huge amount of kind of preparation you need to do for, forthcoming classes in the week. You have to start kind of like research work on projects. You have to start dissertation work. You have to start revising for exams. You have to do presentations. There are always kind of like talks around the university, kind of like business people come onto campus, kind of like to speak in the evenings. There are kind of clubs and societies to go to in the evenings. There's kind of a beer or two or a glass of wine or two to be had with colleagues, to be had with friends. So yeah, it's, kind of to the extent that it's possible to describe a typical day, kind of like that probably is it. Now, just quickly mentioning kind of like semesters 3 and semesters 4 are a little bit different. The actual teaching components kind of the program slows down a little bit, but that's purely because you're now working on the optional modules, and more of the work related to those modules is research based. So you spend more time basically kind of like researching the business problem or the challenge for that subject, kind of in the library or with outside companies, and writing that up. But still, you do spend kind of maybe half of your day in the lecture theatre as opposed to a full day in the lecture theatre in semesters 3 and semesters 4.
Excellent. And I know some of the current students, despite the COVID situation, have been looking at international trips later in this year. Assuming the world continues to move towards a more open traveling society, perhaps we'll get back to what it used to be like, but maybe you could share a bit more on whether you were able to do any international trips during your MBA experience.
Well, we were very fortunate, actually, timing-wise. Obviously, things I understand may have changed a little bit, kind of like over the last couple of years. I mean, absolutely, we were able to do, gosh, I did 4 international trips during my year at Cranfield. Again, kind of gives you an idea how intensive the year is. Firstly, we now kind of a big thing at Cranfield is that the university encourages students to get together kind of in groups basically and participate in what is kind of referred to as business case competitions, business study competitions. Now, in my year, kind of, I got together with 5 other individuals from the cohorts, and we represented Cranfield at the Harvard Business Case Competition in Boston. So around Easter time, so that's kind of April time, the 6 of us flew over to America, and kind of like we represented Cranfield. Kind of a business case competition is kind of like where you are given a real world kind of example or challenge, and you have to write up what you think business wise that you should do around that challenge. So kind of like together with the 5 other individuals from my cohort, kind of we entered, kind of we spent kind of like 4 or 5 weeks kind of like doing study kind of in our own time. We wrote up kind of like a research paper, we submitted it, and kind of we were shortlisted basically for the final. So out of 111 teams, kind of like, and then we went to Boston, we presented, we actually came 7th. Now, kind of it's not a medal position, it's not a podium position, but actually kind of like in terms of being kind of the first team from Cranfield to represent the University of Boston, we came 7th out of 111 teams. So yeah, we were kind of like a little bit proud and chuffed about that. More travel. I also participated in what is called the MBAT, which is kind of almost the students' kind of MBA Olympic Games. So kind of like business schools from around the world, kind of all to get together at one point in the year. It was at the end of June, kind of in my year. And kind of, you know, there's a whole host of different events and kind of like challenges, basically, the business school students enter. I mean, it can be anything. It can be like a kind of like a band challenge. So kind of like, you know, teams get together and have a rock band, for example. There are, you know, there are classic sports like swimming, golf, rugby, football, tennis, squash. And there are also other things as well, kind of like dance, kind of. So, I mean, it's a great experience. So we ended up going and spending 4 days in Paris. Again, I was part of the team that represented Cranfield. I did another business case competition in Paris as well, at another business school, again, representing Cranfield. And I guess the really big kind of like trip that kind of everybody within the Cranfield MBA looks forward to is what is referred to as the International Business Assignment. And this falls towards kind of the end of semester 4. Now, the International Business Assignment is kind of like a paid kind of like either field trip or business trip abroad. Now, firstly, the field trip is Cranfield gives you the opportunity, or kind of the countries change every year, but Cranfield will give you an opportunity, hopefully, kind of, you know, pandemic situation allowing, to go to one of a number of countries to actually work with a company in one of those countries, again, on a business problem or a business challenge which it is facing. Now, in my year, kind of like the people that elected to do the field trip were given the option of going to Zambia in Africa or Sri Lanka. Now, I chose to go to Zambia. So literally kind of together with 20 other kind of like classmates and also individuals from the executive MBA, you know, we flew off to Africa. We landed in Lusaka, and, you know, before we knew it, we'd been divided into small teams. We were kind of on buses disappearing into the middle of nowhere. And so I was very, very fortunate to spend 2 weeks kind of like working with a very, very small little kind of agricultural cooperative in Africa on a marketing challenge which they had. You know, just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Kind of, you know, not only kind of, you know, is it an exotic part of the world, kind of, you know, you're having a great time, but you really get a sense that, you know, that this business knowledge and experience which you've accumulated over the last year, you can actually put into practical effect and really, hopefully, make a meaningful difference to people's lives. So yeah, I mean, it was just an amazing experience from start to finish. Now, again, kind of, you know, from what I understand, kind of like the destinations may change year upon year. And obviously, kind of like we're just coming out, kind of, at least in the UK anyway, of a pandemic situation. So kind of, you know, the structure, the format of that may change somewhat. But yeah, I mean, an amazing opportunity. And I think my experience was pretty much average for most members of the cohort. You know, everybody got to do at least a couple of, you know, international trips during their full-time MBA at Cranfield.
Amazing. I had a question to follow up on that, around what was your highlight of the program, but surely that must have been it, because that sounds absolutely incredible. But yeah, I mean, maybe you could share a bit more around the highlights, or perhaps your favorite class or a professor that really stood out to you, that you really enjoyed, that, you know, that part of the experience, if you can pick one.
Yeah, oh gosh, I mean, it's, I think back, you know, what we did, and kind of, it's so varied. You're literally kind of like, you know, you're doing so many subjects and so many different research projects, and meeting so many great kind of business people and faculty kind of like members. One standout definitely is, you know, as I mentioned when I introduced myself, I had kind of hopefully an inkling, kind of like an aim at some point, basically to start up my own business, to be an entrepreneur. Now, kind of one of Cranfield's real key strengths basically is entrepreneurialism. So if any student basically kind of has a desire to start his or her own company, Cranfield not only has a number of modules kind of orientated around entrepreneurialism, there is kind of on campus as well, kind of a specialist center kind of like dedicated to entrepreneurialism, which is called the Bethany Center. And there are kind of like about 10 senior kind of like faculty members who kind of like teach the elements of kind of starting a company, running kind of like your own small business, and also how to finance your own small business as well. So I spent a lot of time basically interacting with the faculty at the Bethany Center. Now the Bethany Center kind of like runs a number of different kind of like non-curriculum activities. So this is not part of the full-time MBA, but it's very much kind of like open to MBA students. And then the MBA students are encouraged to participate in the Bethany Center's activities. Now, one of those activities is what is called a startup weekend. So if you have the vaguest idea that you might at one point start up your own company, or you have a business idea which you would like to explore to see whether it's feasible to be a startup company, you can go along to one of these startup weekends, and it's literally over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And you take kind of this acorn of a business idea and you develop a business project around that. And it culminates basically in you pitching Dragon's Den style, Shark Tank style, to a panel of kind of like seasoned business individuals. And they will give you, honest and frank feedback, whether they think your idea is fantastic, whether they think your idea is going to crash and burn, whether they think that you're a genius or you're wasting your time. So, I did that kind of, again, I had a business idea, I went to one of Cranfield's startup weekends. I really developed my business idea over 3 days. I pitched to these industry kind of like leaders, and to my, absolute amazement and surprise, I got some really, really good feedback. I guess that's kind of obviously what I wanted to hear, but I was kind of surprised that I got that feedback at the same time. So that really, I think, kind of like spurred me on to actually be brave and not maybe take the easier route post MBA, which would be to go back to maybe a job in kind of the City of London in finance again, or do something else, but actually to go off and be brave and to start up my own company, which I did at the end of the MBA year with another female individual in my cohort, a South African lady, and we did start up our own company. And that's what we've been working on for the last 3 years. So Cranfield absolutely served its purpose from my perspective in, not only teaching me how to run my own company, the components of business, but actually, do you know what, giving me a little bit of a push, and most importantly, giving me that encouragement as well, and that sense of confidence that it was all possible and achievable.
Fantastic. That's so great. It's amazing to hear this, because, in my role working within admissions, I have worked at a few different schools that don't quite have so many entrepreneurs or even a very diverse class. And I know that there are some schools out there that are just focused on people from the same background, and there isn't much diversity in terms of professional backgrounds or future career aims of the class. And it's been really refreshing for me to spend time with our MBA students at Cranfield, and there are so many different people with different backgrounds. And that's another great question from Maya that came in around how diverse is the class, and does this diversity bring any value to the teamwork and the teams that you work with during the program? So maybe, Steven, you could talk a bit more about that diversity that you experienced.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very easy question to answer. The cohorts, the class at Cranfield is extremely diverse. Again, I think there were 59 individuals in my cohort, and we represented, I think, 26 countries within the cohort as well. So, that gives you an idea of how diverse the cohort is. The cohort, Cranfield purposefully does not allow one nationality to dominate the cohort. So a concern of mine was, I didn't particularly want to study with 60 other Brits, when I was doing my MBA, that wasn't the case. I think there was only about 12 British people doing the program, which maybe I shouldn't say it, but was great. I wanted to experience diversity and internationalism, and I certainly got that from the Cranfield class. Yeah, I mean, literally kind of like all continents are represented, and some of my closest friends now kind of like reside in China and India and Canada, and kind of like individuals that I met through the Cranfield program. And also kind of, I think it's an important point to make as well, the cohort is very gender balanced. Way more so, I understand, than other business schools. Kind of in my year, I think the gender balance was 55-45. So unfortunately 55 male, 45 female. But if you look at other business schools, it's very, very much skewed, kind of 80-20 sometimes, kind of male, female. It was a great learning environment, very, very international, and very, very kind of like gender balanced.
Yeah, there's something that we're proud of, but of course, always striving to do better. From an admissions perspective on the gender balance, but certainly something that we do better than the industry standard, which is good, but always room to improve. There was a question around, what did you wish you had known before joining the MBA, and a few similar questions around what would you have done differently. Do you have any view on this, on how you maybe would have made more of it, or what you wish you'd known before?
Very good question. I think kind of I entered the MBA, I think, with my eyes fairly wide open. I kind of knew kind of academically what it would involve. I wasn't expecting it to be quite as intensive as it actually was. I'm not used to working long hours, kind of like working in investment banking. Often kind of maybe kind of I'm not trying to garner sympathy for myself, saying that I used to work kind of from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that kind of continued definitely kind of like into the MBA. So if there was a part of me that maybe was hoping for a little bit of a kind of like an easier year, I didn't get it. But that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's intensive for a reason, that you're doing lots of things and you're learning and you're engaging with people, which is what you're there for. What else do I wish I had known? One thing I think I will touch upon is kind of not only kind of, well, Cranfield has a full-time MBA program, but it also has kind of what is referred to as an executive MBA program. Now, kind of most business schools are the same. So kind of like the full-time program, by definition, students are there and they study full-time. An executive MBA program is where kind of students come and study part-time. So kind of often they continue doing their jobs during the week. They will study at the university at the weekends and kind of maybe do evening classes or calls together as well. Now, Cranfield has also, and kind of I don't want to pitch the MBA at the expense of the full-time MBA, they're very different. And I think most people, certainly for me, the full-time MBA suited my purpose of kind of intensively studying for a year. But actually at Cranfield, kind of it has kind of a world-leading executive MBA program as well. And actually, they're, kind of like Cranfield, I think, has the largest kind of executive MBA program, certainly in the UK and possibly Europe. And kind of, that there was a wealth of kind of individuals there to tap into and network with, that really, I guess, from my personal perspective, I only started kind of like belatedly to do kind of in semester 4. Now, kind of, I think it's really important because kind of, not only kind of will you continue to network with your cohort, but actually these other 250, 300 individuals basically are on kind of like a number of different executive MBA programs at Cranfield. They too will become the senior business leaders and thinkers of tomorrow, and will be spread around kind of like corporate UK, and we'll have kind of like jobs, kind of like leadership jobs, senior leadership jobs kind of all over the world and in the UK. So again, that's a valuable network that kind of I think kind of I slightly missed a trick of not better connecting into kind of like certainly in the first 2/3 of the year. And it was only really during the IBA, so the International Business Assignment, where the Mba and the full-time MBA come together, that actually I realized the importance of and the value of mixing kind of with its other cohort body on campus, kind of like a part of the time as well. I'll mention one other point as well. So Cranfield is a campus university. Everything you need is on campus. There's a wealth of bars, restaurants, there's a small supermarket, you can stay on campus. But Cranfield is actually in a really pretty part of the UK. And, belatedly as well, only kind of, I think it was in semester 3, kind of like I started to kind of like kind of venture off campus a little bit more and discovering some of these amazing small little villages kind of like dotted around the university with great pubs and restaurants and dare I say it, slightly better food sometimes that you can get on campus. So kind of like now I have a favorite pub whenever I'm back in Cranfield. I always go to visit because kind of it was just a lovely place. And another small regret.
That's such a good one to share. Are you still connected with any of your MBA classmates? I think you mentioned that you made friends with people from all over the world. So do you stay connected even after graduating?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, not only do I obviously work kind of like now with one member of the cohort, kind of like who I started the business with. Yeah, it's kind of like as is the way of the world these days, kind of like the cohort had a WhatsApp group, and it's a rare day basically that there isn't some sort of like long exchange or debate or discussion on the WhatsApp group. And this is 3.5 years effectively after the end of our time at Cranfield. I am in regular contact, kind of like, as I mentioned, kind of like the individuals in my learning team now kind of like are very, very good, firm friends. And I'm in regular contact with quite a few other individuals in the cohort. Regrettably, kind of a number of individuals left the country. So, I've gone back to Brazil or India or Japan. But we all, to the extent that we can, kind of like stay in regular contact. And at least kind of like 3 or 4 times a year, kind of there are regular big meetups. So, we'll go to London for a night out, kind of in a restaurant or a pub, etc. So yeah, I mean, very, very much they kind of like my network massively expanded because of Cranfield, my professional network. And that's absolutely the case for most other people as well.
Fantastic, great. I know we've been talking for some time, and we may have to wrap up soon. And I had a lot more questions that I received from prospective applicants in advance of this session that I could ask you, but I just want to go back to one point that Faisal had asked earlier on in the chat around the GMAT or GRE requirements. And maybe I just spend just a quick minute on this, and that again, Cranfield has this holistic approach to the admissions review. So although we do care about applicants having strong academic capacity to handle and thrive in what is an intensive program, we don't like to say that we have a definite minimum scores of a super high GMAT that we require, because again, it's just one element that is considered. So you are able to take either GMAT or GRE or the Cranfield admissions test. So all 3 are accepted. It is important to spend some time on this and to try to get the best score that you can for yourself, not necessarily just for the admissions process, but then some of the more, I guess, traditional hiring companies after the MBA may also ask to look at your GMAT score, for example, although this is becoming less common. So it is important to be sure that you can get the best score that will reflect your abilities, but not to let it become a barrier for you to apply. So most of our applicants will have over 600 or so GMAT score, or the equivalent in the GRE, or in the Cranfield admissions test. But as I said, it is an important factor. It's good to take some time to prepare for this before you apply, but it's not the be all end all of an application, because as I said before, we have a holistic approach to the admissions review. But thanks for pointing that out, Faisal, for that question. There was, maybe we just have one final question that I could ask you, Steven. It's around what did you learn about yourself from the Cranfield Mba experience? Maybe this is a bit of a personal one to ask, but what reflections do you have on what you learned about yourself from that experience?
Gosh, what did I learn about myself? I think kind of what did I learn about myself? Maybe I didn't know as much about business as I thought I did, kind of like going into the MBA. What else did I learn? I think as well, kind of I learned that kind of my professional life had been very, very siloed, kind of in terms of kind of I had only really dealt with financial services, with investment banking, and kind of it was really illuminating basically to work with other different people from other different industries and people in other different roles. For example, like a doctor, or someone who had been in the RAF, or basically an electrical engineer from China. And I guess kind of like what I learned is that kind of there is a massive big business world out there, And however much I thought I knew, and however good I thought I was, but there was so much more still to learn. And the MBA is absolutely the right environment, basically, to broaden your professional horizons, to broaden your professional ambitions, to experiment, to challenge yourself, and really, I think, to understand what you want out of your professional life, to give you the career confidence, and to go for it, and actually to make that big jump, that big change in your career if you wish to do so. Most people, I think, who graduate from Cranfield's MBA do really go on to more significant senior positions, leadership positions or thought leadership positions, in their industry or their profession. It enabled me to do so, and certainly I think the vast majority of my colleagues in my cohort were also able, to definitely make that change in their professional career and deliver into their ambitions and aspirations.
Great. Well, Steven, thank you so much for joining and sharing all of your incredible insights there. It was so valuable for me, and I hope it was of value too to the attendees. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's attended to listen to our discussion today. We really appreciate that you took the time to join this call, and also we hope that we will see you on Saturday for the preview day with the masterclass that's happening then. But yeah, thank you so much, Steven, and thank you to the team at Unimai and Zori for arranging the session. We really appreciate it, and maybe we can hand back to you to close off the session, but a big thank you from us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aidan and Steven. This was a really very insightful session. We learned that the Cranfield experience is very enriching and very exciting, with all these things that you offer, like the international trips, business competitions, real life projects, startup weekends, like all these experiences that would empower the students to go for this career change for the good. So we hope we have helped our attendees to make their decision to apply for Cranfield. And yeah, follow us and follow Cranfield for more information. Visit the webinar this weekend, and don't forget that the next deadline is the 23rd of January. So once again, thanks to everyone for attending and watching us, and hope to see you soon.